Ladies and gentlemen, the show we've all been waiting for. Paranormal Buzz Radio is proud to present REP Paranormal and Friends with your hosts, Kim Purvis and Allison Robinson. Live every Thursday night on Spreaker, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific. Be sure to check out their Facebook page, REP Paranormal Busters.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of REP Paranormal and Friends. We have a special guest on who is no stranger to the show, has been on a couple times. Amanda Woomer, also, you may know her from Spook Eats. So please welcome Amanda to the show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. So before we kind of get started, Amanda does have a new book out, but before we go into that, why don't you kind of give us a little bit of background on yourself for all the new listeners?
Sure. So I'm Amanda, and I run the website Spook Eats. Basically, it's a travel website where we travel the country when there's not a pandemic happening. So we're starting to get back out there now.
Right. Yeah.
But we focus on haunted hospitality. So we visit haunted restaurants, haunted bars, haunted hotels, all that fun stuff. We try the food, we review the food, and we share the ghost stories. So it's been a really fun process, kind of getting to know the spooky places that you can eat and drink and search for spirits of all kinds throughout the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, we talked about that before, and I think that would be fun to do. Especially, you get to try all this amazing food, but it also helps when there's something spooky or unusual that happens in that place.
Exactly. I always say to people, like, when you're traveling, you have to eat wherever you are. So instead of going to some chain restaurant, why not go to a place that has tons of history? It's
right.
Local. There's all these special dishes, and hopefully you have a ghostly encounter.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. Now, you do have a new book out, The Femine Macabre. And can you tell us a little bit about that? Is that like, you had a lot of collaboration with that, correct?
Yes. So basically, The Femine Macabre is our new all-female paranormal journal. So we actually released volume 1 back in March, and it was a smashing success. I think a lot of people really appreciated it and felt that it kind of offered a platform for, a marginalized group. So many times when you think of paranormal investigators and researchers, you think of men.
Right, yep.
You don't really think of women. And it's interesting, as a side note, whenever people ask me, like, oh, what gave you the idea for The Femine Macabre? I always say, I was doing a show on Paranormal Buzz Radio, and we were talking about women in the paranormal.
Absolutely.
Which was this show. It was your show. And I just remember talking about, like, Catherine Crowe and Eleanor Sidgwick, and being like, I don't think a lot of people know who we're talking about.
No, I don't think they did.
Yeah. So I was like, that was what planted the seed in my brain. So technically, it's all thanks to you guys.
Hey, well, I'm glad we can help in some way.
Yes. But volume 2 is out now, and it's bigger than the last volume. The last volume, we had 30 women contribute different essays in areas of, obviously, hauntings, because that's my specialty, so that's what I focus on as well. But also witchcraft, tarot, cryptids, dark history, death culture, things like that. For volume 2, we have 40 different contributors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was hard to kind of pick and choose,
Right.
which is a good problem to have.
Right, absolutely.
So our foreword was written by Michelle Bellinger, which people might recognize her from Portals to Hell or Paranormal State.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful. The introduction that Michelle wrote is just so inspiring. And the exciting thing about this new volume is that we actually opened it up to artists. We had several artists reach out asking if they could contribute, and then also individuals that identify as non-binary. So we wanted to really kind of hone in on the fact that it's not a girls versus boys thing. It's not a male versus female thing. It's just really shining a light on the important work that women are doing in the paranormal that you won't necessarily see it on TV because they're not on the paranormal reality shows, and that's usually where people find most of their information in this field. So I'm really excited to be able to kind of offer a place for these people to share their theories and their experiences and their research, and it's absolutely fascinating. So my hope is that people enjoy reading it, they're entertained by it, they get to know a lot of new people in the paranormal field, and also walk away learning something new.
Absolutely. And by the way, I absolutely love Michelle. We've had her on the show.
She is amazing.
I know. I fangirl over her.
I do too. When I actually was thinking, all right, brainstorming, who do I want for Volume 2 to write our forward? Because Patty Negri wrote our forward for Volume 1.
Very cool.
Yes, she was a pleasure to work with. So I was brainstorming, and I was like, I had my little list going, and I sent an email to Michelle, we'll see. Probably won't even hear back from her. And boom, right away. That sounds really interesting. That sounds really fun. I'd love to know more. And she was just an absolute pleasure to work with. So inspiring. And her forward is so inspirational and really kind of reinvigorated my passion for this project as well. So I just absolutely adored working with her. It made me love her even more.
Oh, yes. I can't wait to read it. I can't wait. I'm super excited for it. Now, can you tell us maybe who has taken part in this? Do you have some names or anything that's going to be in the book?
Yeah, so for Volume 2, we have a bunch of people that you may have heard of before. Some people are very active on social media, whether it's TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. Some people you might just get to know for the very first time. So firstly, we actually have Emily Wayland from the Singular Fortean Society. She's actually the designer. She's done all the cover artwork. Oh, wow. Very cool. Absolutely beautiful work she's done for both Volume 1 and Volume 2. And she has a piece in here. She's a professional photographer. Oh, wow. And she kind of takes us through her investigation on a very specific ghost photograph. Basically, really, really interesting to get her professional take on it. It's very easy for us to look at a picture and be like, oh, that's dust, that's an orb, whatever. Yeah. But she actually does a great job at really explaining what these things could be, what it might not be. So that's a really great piece. Also, Amy Bennett, she's from Full Dark Paranormal, and she was in Volume 1, and she's also going to be in Volume 2, and she wrote a piece on basically women in insane asylums and how a lot of times they were wrongfully institutionalized and kind of how it really affects women choosing today willingly to go to haunted asylums to investigate. Yeah. So she looks at that. We also have Sharice Williams. She's really popular on Instagram and TikTok. She incorporates a lot of spirituality and intuition with her paranormal investigation. So she works with tarot and pendulum work. Really, really fascinating stuff there. But trying to think if there's anyone else that people might right away know. We have ladies from the Nightgeist podcast, Erica and Liana. They're really great, as well as Ashley from the Keep It Weird podcast. Yeah, so people who, they do podcasts, they do YouTube, some women that, really focus on the research end of things, kind of getting, down and dirty in the research. And then we also have several individuals that identify as non-binary. So, and it was perfect because Michelle Bellinger, she's very open about intersex. So it was almost like this beautiful alignment of this is our first volume where we opened it up to individuals, not just female, that's it.
Right.
So it was almost perfect that we also had Michelle on board for our forward. So it couldn't have worked out more beautifully.
That's amazing. Now, do you have a date as to when this may be available to everyone to purchase?
So I just sent in the edits. So I'm hoping end of August. So by the time people are listening to this, fingers crossed, it will be available.
Awesome.
Fingers crossed.
Awesome. And
sorry.
No, you're fine. And where will it be available for them to purchase?
So the easiest place to find it, because I know some people have a hard time tracking down volume 1 on Amazon. So I just tell people, just go right to Spook Eats. Go to spookeats.com/Femine Macabre, and there'll be an option to purchase a copy of Volume 2 there. Also, if anyone's thinking of submitting to Volume 3, which will open that up in a few months.
I was going to ask about that.
Yes, of course. Submission guidelines will also be at spookeats.com/Femine Macabre. So it's kind of your one-stop shop for Volume 1, Volume 2, and then submission guidelines for Volume 3.
That is so awesome. It's so awesome because, I was going to bring that up before you brought it up about how we did have a show where we talked about women in the paranormal field and how long it's been going on for so many years. But, we were kind of thrown to the back or,
Yep. Yeah, it's every time someone asks, I say, well, I was on Rep Paranormal on Paranormal Buzz Radio, and we were just talking about it, and that was the seed that was planted, and it's interesting to see the shift happening because I feel like that was over a year ago now that we did that show.
Yep.
And I feel like since then, women in the community have really kind of stepped up to the plate. They've really kind of rallied behind the idea that we are kind of being ignored and forgotten as the paranormal moves forward. Let's kind of take a piece of that community back for ourselves because we've been here since the beginning. Let's get credit where credit's due. And that was my hope with the Femine Macabre, was not to erase men from the narrative because they've always been there, but so have the women, and people seem to forget that.
Yep, absolutely. It's dated back to the 1800s, mid 1800s. So I was just talking about that. We just actually talked about some of that on our last podcast with Varla Ventura. We were talking about kind of the Victorian era, and we talked about the Fox sisters and all that jazz. So that was kind of cool. But so it kind of intertwines with what we're talking about now today. So
you can't escape it. It's the history of the paranormal. The ladies, technically, I'm going to say it, Catherine Crowe did the first paranormal investigation in the 1850s. Fight me on it. Girls started it first.
Yes, that's right. Oh my goodness. So do you have any other projects? I know you're very busy, but do you have anything else in the works or?
Oh gosh. So currently, once the Femine Macabre is done, for this year, it'll be all that I do with the Femine Macabre. It won't reopen again until next year. So I can focus on my projects. I'm actually working on a book right now focusing on we'll be delicate and say ladies of the night, historically speaking, and how different restaurants and hotels and bars, a lot of times they have hauntings surrounding former brothels and the ladies that worked there. So it's kind of going to look at the history of that area of society and how, these women may have just been nameless blips in history, but because of the ghost stories and these haunted locations that keep telling their stories, they've kind of found immortality now. So I want to focus on each of those ladies in different chapters. So that's the big project I'm working on next. A couple of other little side projects too, but that's my big thing. After the Femine Macabre is done, that's next.
Awesome, man. You are always just so busy.
I was going to say, and keeping a tiny human alive. It's a little difficult.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine. But props to you for doing all that. Do you have any, events or anything that you're going to be doing, or?
Nothing too big right now. I've started doing several library and historical society talks again, which I absolutely love doing, and COVID just put a total stop to that.
Yes.
With the Delta variant's kind of making people a little questionable with having in-person events, so it's kind of tentative right now. I did have a bunch of events for Halloween planned, but they might turn into virtual or they might just be rescheduled. We'll see. But nothing too big or exciting right now. Kind of just biding my time until Baby Spook Eats is older and I can start traveling again to do, like, Haunted America, and Cryptid Bash is happening today. And,
oh, yes, I did see
like
that. Yes. Now, when this book comes out, do you plan on doing any kind of events for that, like where you do like book signings, or you're going to have it out anywhere that people could come see you or anything like that? Have you thought of that at all?
So what we've done in the past with Volume 1, we did a lot of virtual things just because COVID made it difficult. And also, especially with this book in particular, because it's women from all over the world, doing in-person events, you might get one or two people involved and then everyone else is, in Ireland or Australia.
Right, yes.
So nothing in person just yet, but who knows, down the road I would love to be able to do like a bigger event where it's, a bunch of the ladies from the Femine Macabre getting together, possibly doing a talk or a panel, because the knowledge that these women possess is just so amazing. I learned so much whenever I read these submissions. It's just, I'm a total geek and nerd, so like anytime I learn something new, I get so excited.
Right.
So hopefully down the road, I have visions of grandeur with this journal. So my hope is that to keep it going through the years. Hopefully we can do a publication twice a year. That's my goal right now. And we'll just kind of see where it takes us. I was afraid when we did Volume 1 that nobody would submit anything and I would have to pretend to be 30 different women to get it out there. And that didn't happen, thank goodness. And then with Volume 2, we had just as many submissions as Volume 1. So my hope is that it continues to grow over the years.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, more and more people get involved with it and, start reading it and they're aware of it, and really kind of get behind the idea that women are just as important as men in the field. They work with just as much integrity and they work just as hard, and we should acknowledge that hard work.
Yes, absolutely. Because, we do have some wonderful women in this group, and some of them you do see on TV, but I don't think they get shined on as much. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always, you have like your all-male teams that are all over the place, and then if you're lucky enough to have a woman on a show, she's always countered with a man.
Yes.
It's never just a leading lady. There is always one of each. So
yes,
hopefully over time things will start changing and evolving. But in the meantime, we've got the Femine Macabre.
Yes, that's right. You know what? They need to have an all-women's paranormal team on TV.
I don't know what they're waiting for. Like, there's plenty of us. I feel like we make up the majority, quite honestly. Yeah. Like, whenever I host events, whenever I do events and I go to them, I'm always like, there's more women than men here, and the men look like they don't want to be here.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times the women drag the men there.
Yes, 100%. I always feel that way. I'm like, your girlfriend dragged you here, didn't she?
Yeah, because we notice that too when we go places. The majority is women there. So, and a lot of times Kim and I will just go with all women.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that I hope it's coming. I hope that in the next few years, networks will realize that this is a market that is seriously lacking and that people want to see it. I know right now they say it doesn't make good television, but I beg to differ. I know so many incredible women that would make a kick-ass team, and it would be fantastic. I would be the first to watch it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yes, I know. Me too. I would love it. As long as they're not on their faking stuff, then I'm good with it.
Yes, exactly.
That's a whole nother show right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
Okay, so before we start wrapping things up, why don't you go ahead and just give out your information? Where can people find you again? And then if you want to say your website again and everything, like I said, we'll put it on our social media too. But just so everyone that's listening can hear where they can find you and find your books.
Yeah, so I am at spookeats.com. That is where you can find books, You can find information on the Feminine Macabre if anyone is interested in submitting. And I really want to encourage you, anyone who's listening that identifies as either female or non-binary, I really encourage you to read through the submission guidelines and possibly submit something. We have a lot of women on here that this is their first time being published. It doesn't matter if you haven't been published before or if you have been published multiple times. You know, if you have a theory or research or a topic that you're really passionate about that is strange or unusual, you know, we would love to read it. So again, that's at spookeats.com, specifically spookeats.com/feminine macabre. And then myself, I am all over social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, even though I'm like an old lady on TikTok. I'm trying though.
There's plenty of people on there.
I know. But all of those platforms, I'm just at Spook Eats. It's nice and easy. And again, if anyone is listening, I really encourage you to, you know, pick up a copy of the Feminine Macabre, see what sort of things have been accepted into the past, and consider submitting for Volume 3. We would love to include you.
Awesome. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. I love coming on the show.
We love having you. It's amazing. And you always have fun and interesting things to talk about. So we'll have to have you on again for all your other endeavors that you do so we can kind of catch up and see where you're at and see where it's basically the sky is the limit for you. I mean, you're going all over the place and you've got so many awesome things going on. So props to you for all the hard work that you do.
Oh, thank you. It's mostly coffee.
Mostly coffee. I run on beer and wine.
I was going to say, if I'm not drinking coffee or water, it's beer. So it's one of the three.
One of the three. Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for being on. And thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Thank you for listening to REP Paranormal and Friends. Be sure to check out Kim and Allison on Facebook at REP Paranormal Busters.